Hello again, everyone. My name is Louis Ruggiero. Welcome to the King Messiah Project. This is the conclusion of a 10-part series titled Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah, which has been dedicated to the Jewish people to explain to them why so many believe that Yeshua is the prophesied Messiah foretold in the Hebrew Scriptures. The title of this session is The Case for Yeshua. Now, during this session, I'd like to summarize all of the biblical texts in the Tanakh pointing directly to Yeshua as the Messiah, while reminding all of my Jewish friends out there who are listening that if even one of these points is true, then Yeshua must be, I repeat, must be your Messiah. Before I begin bringing out the case for Yeshua, I'd like to remind everyone that the Bible teaches that the Messiah's ministry is twofold, and because of this, he would come twice. His first mission was to reconcile his people with their Maker by atoning for their sins. Yeshua accomplished this through his redeeming work on the cross shortly after he rode into Jerusalem on a donkey in fulfillment of Zechariah chapter 9 verse 9. Here's the verse. Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, thy king cometh unto thee. He is just and having salvation, lowly, and riding upon an ass, and upon a colt, the foal of an ass. Yeshua fulfilled this in Matthew chapter 21, verses 1 through 8. The Messiah's second mission, according to Zechariah chapter 14, along with a number of other biblical references, is to rescue his people by defeating the nations that come against Jerusalem. On that day, he will come with the clouds of heaven in fulfillment of Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 through 14. There's the passage where Israel is under attack from the nations of the earth in Zechariah chapter 14, verses 1 through 2. Zechariah 14, verses 3 through 4 teach that the Messiah's feet will stand in that day on the Mount of Olives when he fights against those nations. And in verse 12, this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. The nations of the earth are defeated. And in Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 through 14, it prophesies the Messiah coming with the clouds of heaven, which is a cross-reference to Zechariah chapter 14. Now in John chapter 5, verse 39, this is what Yeshua said. Search the scriptures, for in them ye think ye have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. So, here's the first proof text pointing to Yeshua. Psalm chapter 2, verses 6 through 7 reads, Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord had said unto me, Thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Remember, in part 8 of this series, I shared with you that this passage cannot be about King David, as Rabbinic Judaism teaches, because of the next two verses. In Psalm 2:8, David never asked for the heathen for his inheritance and the uttermost parts of the earth for his possession, and he didn't receive it, but the Messiah will. And in Psalm chapter 2, verse 9, David never dashed the nations in pieces like a potter's vessel, but according to Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, recorded in Daniel chapter 2, the Messiah will. The next proof I'd like to share with you is the biblical evidence of a divine visitation taking place during the Second Temple period. Here are the passages pointing to this event elaborated upon in part 9 of this series. Haggai chapter 2 verses 6 through 7 and 9 states, For thus saith the Lord of hosts, Yet once, it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come. And I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than of the former, saith the Lord of hosts. And in this place will I give peace, saith the Lord of hosts. Who is the desire of all nations? How did God fill that second temple with a glory greater than the first? Could it have been through his begotten son, Yeshua? Who is Ha-Adon, the Lord Yahweh, who suddenly comes to his temple, according to Malachi chapter 3, verses 1 through 2? Once again, could the answer be Yeshua? Remember, it was Yeshua who turned over the tables of the money changers in the second temple, according to Matthew chapter 21, verse 12. So, he was there. The next biblical text pointing directly to Yeshua is found in Micah chapter 5, verse 2, Micah 5:1 in Jewish Bibles. This points to the Messiah, the ruler, the king, the judge, being born in Bethlehem. Here's the verse. It reads, But thou, Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, Yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. And as we all know, according to Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 6, Yeshua was born in Bethlehem. Oh, this one is important. Let's not forget God's curse on all of Jeconiah's descendants, declaring them ineligible to sit on David's throne as king. Because of this, the Hebrew scriptures are void of all legitimate progenitors to the Messiah who lived after the Babylonian exile. This is fully outlined in part 2 of this 10-part series. Here's the verse. Jeremiah chapter 22, verse 30, regarding Jeconiah. This is what it says. Thus saith the Lord, write ye this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in his days. For no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David, and ruling any more in Judah. Because of this, because God consumed the kingly line in his anger, the Messiah had to be born of a virgin, according to Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. Here's the verse that is discussed in detail in part 3 of this series. This is what God said to the house of David. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive, and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel meaning God is with us. Just a reminder to my Jewish friends who are listening, if the Hebrew word Alma in that verse merely means young woman, what kind of sign would it be from God that a young woman would conceive? After all, that's been occurring on a daily basis since the days of Adam and Eve. Now, a sign of a virgin conceiving, that would clearly be a sign from God. Something to think about, isn't it? Now here's the next biblical proof pointing to Yeshua. Psalm 78 verse 2 says, I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old. This was fulfilled in Matthew chapter 13 verse 34 by Yeshua. This is what it says. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spake he not unto them. Here's another prophecy pointing to Yeshua. Isaiah 53 verse 3 says, He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid as it were our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. According to John chapter 1 verse 11, this was fulfilled by Yeshua. This is what it says. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. Now this is probably the strongest prophecy in the Hebrew scriptures pointing to Yeshua, the 70 weeks of Daniel prophecy found in Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 through 27, covered in part 1 of this series. This is what it says in verse 25. Daniel 9:25 states, Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the anointed one, the Messiah the Prince shall be, 7 weeks and 62 weeks, that 69 weeks, the street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Now Nehemiah chapter 2 verses 1 through 8 teaches that Artaxerxes provided that decree in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of his reign, which would have been 445 BC. Now 69 weeks is 69 times 7 years, which is 483 years. 483 years times 360 days per year is 173,880 days. 445 BC plus 173,880 days brings us to the precise day that Yeshua rode into Jerusalem on a donkey in fulfillment of Zechariah chapter 9 verse 9. And finally, Isaiah chapter 53, the suffering servant, Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah, who was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, and with his stripes we are healed. God laid on him the iniquity of us all. Parts 4, 5, and 6 of this 10-part series totally rebuts the rabbinic position that Isaiah chapter 53 is about Israel. It can only be about one individual, and that is Yeshua. Now let's go to the board and summarize. How many people do we know were born in Bethlehem, were born of a virgin, that are begotten of God, who spoke in parables, who rode into Jerusalem on a donkey precisely 69 weeks after the commandment was given to rebuild Jerusalem, who was despised of the people, and was bruised for our iniquities and wounded for our transgressions? Was Yeshua the one who turned over the tables of the money changers in Matthew chapter 21, verse 12, the divine visitation prophesied in Haggai chapter 2, verses 6 through 9, and Malachi chapter 3? If not, who else could it have been? What other individual do we know of fulfill these prophecies? Something to think about, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the case for Yeshua, the Jewish Messiah, and this is a serious issue. You can embrace it or reject it. Either you believe it or you don't. The choice is up to you. Now, this is what it says in Zechariah chapter 7, verses 11 through 13 regarding Israel. But they refused to hearken, and pulled away the shoulder, and stopped their ears, that they should not hear. Yea, they made their hearts as an adamant stone, lest they should hear the law, and the words which the Lord of hosts hath sent in his Spirit by the form of prophets. Therefore came a great wrath from the Lord of hosts. As you can see, God gets angry when his people don't believe in the prophets. The prophets pointed to Yeshua, so believe in Yeshua. This concludes this 10-part series. On behalf of the King Messiah Project, this is Louis Ruggiero saying, God bless you all.